Honey, you best believe I'm about to get started. Well, welcome, Jack Dillon.
Hello.
Hello. I love the way your voice just changed right now. That was magical. You sound like a little Disney prince.
I have many voices that I can do.
Do you?
Oh yeah, so many.
I think it's just. I think it's mostly the mic that's doing most of the work right now.
It's
but
just
you do
the
sound
microphone.
great.
That's how you make it in Hollywood. You just buy a really expensive microphone, and then everything will come to you, and you'll book like a baddie.
The craziest shit is that what you're saying is not untrue. Like
I
that.
know.
That is actually partially very much the truth in Hollywood.
Absolutely. It's all about appearances. I'm not talented at all.
It's all about, oh, I thought you meant like actual appearances. I was like, you mean how you look? I was like, no, that completely goes against, it's like, you've got a face for radio kind of thing.
No, actually, people do go off of what you look sometimes.
Well, isn't that strange? Because a lot of these voiceover for those who are just tuning in, hi creepers. Welcome to CreepTime, the podcast. I forget
Welcome
to do this
CreepTime,
every
the
time.
podcast
Now,
with
it's
Silas
normally with Silas Dean and Stu, but Stu, I should explain. So they've missed Stu because we've been off for like 3 weeks. Stu was on vacation in Puerto Rico, comes back from Puerto Rico, had contracted COVID at a super spreader event. So she was sick for a week, so we couldn't do the podcast that week. Immediately she recovers and she's not contagious anymore. After that, she goes on a family vacation to Utah, to the Mormons.
Oh, no.
So we've been without her for 3 weeks. So I have the lovely Jack Dillon, who is filling in as my co-host. So welcome to Creep Time with Silas Dean and Jack.
Hi, creepers.
Yeah, they're going to love you. I'm sure they're so excited to have just like a little change of pace, but I know
They'll be
big
like,
shoes
who
to
the hell
fill.
is this?
No. They're very attached to Stu, and rightfully so, because she is like resident sleuth. But this will
Stu
be
is great.
fun because we're going to do something different. I have geared up for you, and I wanted to do this specifically for you, mostly because we kind of got fucked on our Disney trip where we were trying to get into the park.
They didn't want us.
They didn't. I've explained that
Thanksgiving.
to everybody, and I just want to say that I've received no sympathy from not a single person.
What's
Like,
wrong with all of you?
the problem is I've mostly been talking to people who go to Disney so frequently that they're used to the booking system. I did not know there was a booking system. So on Thanksgiving Day, Jack and I were both we're East Coasters, so we were both in Los Angeles, and I'm like, oh well, let's go to Disneyland to celebrate in Anaheim. So we just show up, me thinking it's like a fucking Six Flags. And I get there and I'm like, 2 tickets, please. And she goes, the most crass woman, the most haggardly woman who was at the ticketing booth. And she goes, for when? And I was like, well, for today. I was like, we just paid for parking. And she was like, honey, you're not getting into the park today. We're at max capacity. And she goes, you might get in Sunday. And I was like, what? And she goes, we're on a booking system. You don't know that? And I'm like, no, because I'm not up in the fucking Disney blogs every day reading about the ins and outs of your protocol. I'm the guest.
It was an affront to the Thanksgiving spirit of giving back. Giving back to the patrons.
I know. And then she made it even worse because she lied to us, because I was like, what? Oh my God. I was so devastated because we'd planned our whole day around that. And I was like, what am I going to do about parking? I just paid like $35. And she goes, get in your car. She goes, get in your car, go down to the exit ramp, and you're going to see someone at a ticketing booth for parking. They're going to be able to refund you. That lying hag sent us down the exit, which if anyone who's been to Disneyland Anaheim, you know, when you go down the exit, it immediately takes you directly onto the highway. There is no person in a booth. She lied to me.
That's why Disney's full of secrets.
I know. Well, this is exactly why I wanted to do this, to take them down.
I want to take them down, but if they want to employ me...
I was going to say, I'm absolutely kidding. And I just wanted to say the sponsor of this podcast is actually Disneyland Anaheim. We're very excited.
Anaheim.
Well, okay, this may be a good like tee up, because I should preface what we're going to get into today are conspiracies and dark urban legends around Disneyland, or actually Disney parks as a whole. And I'm going to keep it pretty light at first, but they will progressively get worse and worse as we go along. But I will give a little bit of a disclaimer up front. So these are just conspiracies. They are theories. They are not fact. We are just exploring them as topics of conversation purely for entertainment, education, what have you. They are not necessarily the views of us as your hosts or the affiliates of CreepTime, the podcast, and they are not intended to harm any one person or any company at all. That seems pretty clear, right?
That's very clear. Very legal. Very legal.
Right, exactly. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into some fucking shit.
Let's do it.
So, what do I have teed up? Now, we should first talk about Disney and just like our experience outside of that horrible day on Thanksgiving.
You know, I can't get past it though. It's
what, the
in
day
my
on
brain.
Thanksgiving? It scarred you?
It scarred me because I was really excited to, I don't know, maybe see a Thanksgiving Day parade.
Can I just say,
on
you
Main
did
Street,
seem
USA.
you seemed especially devastated. I felt really bad, and I felt compelled to make it up to you that day. I felt really, really upset that you were so upset.
I know, but to everyone listening, we did have a good day. We went to Universal Studios, and
back to the real sponsor of this
great it was.
podcast, Universal.
Universal. I never really explored outside of Universal Studios, only the Harry Potter part, and then Silas was able to show me everything else. And I do have to say, I'm actually really impressed by the park itself. It's like there's a lot of things in the Hollywood tour. What?
Okay. People sleep on that tour, but I'm telling you, everyone who comes from out of town, as Scott, you guys know Scott. You've listened to him on the podcast before when we did the Debbie Collier episode. I took him on the Hollywood Lot Tour at Universal, the Universal Lot Tour. That's so much fun. It's such a blast.
I don't know if Scott needed to piss like a racehorse the entire time. But
Did you?
I did. I was. This is a secret that is now being revealed on the podcast.
You've never told me this.
No, in that
Jesus.
line, so the line was pretty massive.
Conspiracies,
And I'm in
and cover-ups.
the back of the line, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to go to the bathroom. And I was like, well, I can just get through this line, and maybe, at the front of the line, there could be a bathroom. And then you turn to me just
so
like, I don't know what
illogical.
you were talking about. And you're like, this the tour is like 2 hours long or something like that. And we were like at the front about to get on the bus.
No.
And I was like, I have to. So I literally almost had like a bladder infection because I held my bladder for so long.
Jack,
And
I didn't know that. I didn't know.
No, it was horrible. But I didn't want to be a downer.
That makes me upset because I wanted you to have such a good experience on that.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I had a great experience.
Right, you were just felt like warm piss running down your leg halfway through.
Absolutely. Unlike Disneyland, which has a really horrible stain on my memory. What's your experience with Disney in general, Silas?
Disney in general. Well, let's see. I've only been to the Florida park twice in my life. I went once when I was really young.
Only twice?
Yeah, only twice.
I've been there 5 to 6 times.
Only child. I mean, what else are your parents going to do with you?
You're doxing me by saying I'm an only child right now.
That's doxing?
I feel exposed that I should be, I don't think I come across as an only child. Would you say so?
Well, the fact that you just admitted you went to Disney 5 times, I think makes it pretty explicitly clear for the audience, I would say.
Anyway, how did you like your time in the parks?
Well, like I said, how young were you when you first went? Because I went when I was 5, which I think is too young.
I went when I was 5.
Do you not think that was... could you remember it? I couldn't remember anything.
Of course I remember. I stayed at the Wilderness Lodge.
What?
And it was great. I got to pretend as if I was in a never-ending campfire, because that's the theme of that resort.
The Wilderness Lodge? This is a Magic Kingdom? Or like outside of Magic Kingdom?
This is outside of Magic Kingdom along that river. I don't know what the river's called, but it's a man-made river where they placed like 3 hotels. Wilderness Lodge,
Got it.
Polynesian Resort, and the Grand Floridian. And the Contemporary.
I do not recall any of that. I just remember bits and pieces of my 5-year-old experience. And then the second time I went, I was just a bit too old because it was more about my sister going because she was 7. So by that time, like, it was me, my brother, and my sister. So I was the oldest at like 14. Like, I had just turned 14, which is still like a good age to enjoy Disney if you're a kid. But I was just like on the older side. So I was phased out of enjoying like the teacups and like Dumbo. I was no longer that child.
You didn't like those.
I mean, well, as a 14-year-old, no, I was too busy being edgy.
What ride
wearing
did you like the
PacSun.
most?
I love all the scary rides, unsurprisingly. I loved Haunted Mansion. I loved Tower of Terror. I loved Rock and Roller Coaster. That ride can actually fuck you up. That ride is crazy.
I'm afraid of roller coasters, so that ride in particular is something that I would never ever go on. Tower of Terror, actually. I've been to Disneyland Paris. That's how much of a Disney adult I am.
You've been to Disneyland Paris?
Oh, oui, I have been to Disneyland Paris.
Okay, well, if it wasn't sold before that you're an only child, I think that just like put the final nail in the coffin.
The castle is pink. It's not blue like the other one.
Disneyland Paris.
Disneyland Paris. And you know what? It's weird because the parades are in English.
That's interesting. I have some shit that I'm going to talk about later, specifically about Disneyland Paris, that I think is going to mar a bit of your interpretation of it. Well, did you know it didn't used to be Disneyland Paris? It was once Euro Disney. Did you know that?
No, what?
Yeah. So I think it first, I'm going to get into this, like a bunch of this later, but when Disneyland Euro Disney first came about, it was a huge financial investment. So Disney was not the sole owner of that. It was actually partially owned by like several different conglomerates and like major companies. There was like a Saudi prince who owned like 10% of it. And because of that, Disney did not have full control over every aspect, specifically the managerial side of how that park was run. And there was some shit going down in that park when it first came out. Following a lot of like the PR debacle, I think Disney invested like major dollars to overhaul everything, take over more ownership, more managerial responsibility. But yeah, it used to be Euro Disney.
That is wild to me. I've never heard of this.
Well, you're hearing about it now on CreepTime, the podcast.
The Silas D.
So I guess we should get into some of this. And like I said, I'm going to start pretty light with the conspiracies. And some of these in the beginning are actually mostly supported by public fact. So there are like quotes that came out from employees, people who still work at Disney. There are public patents. So things that kind of teeter on the side of like, this is like urban legend conspiracy, but it's most likely true, right?
I'm ready to be scared.
Okay, well, you won't be scared by this one. This one is more so the conspiracy that we're going to talk about is the theory that Disney parks have been strategically designed to brainwash their patrons. So I'll elaborate just a little bit. Now, this has to do with the power of suggestion and sense memory. Have you ever heard anything like this about Disney? It seems kind of commonplace that you would assume, maybe?
I guess so, because of the music that they have and stuff.
It's actually much more like predatory, like sensory wise than that. So Disney, they've curated this experience across a lot of their parks, where when you enter certain portions of the park, there are smells that are pumped directly into those areas to inform your next purchase or how you feel about that experience in that section of the park overall.
What?
So for example, if you're kind of passing an area, right, where like you're going to turn a corner and you're going to find like a churro stand at Disney, very like classic thing, you might immediately smell churros before you even turn the corner, which you'd assume, oh, it's coming from the fresh churros they're making. Not at all. It is being pumped to you from like a close enough distance to inform, first like plant the thought and then inform your purchase intent. And it doesn't just end there. This goes for candy shops. It goes for food spots. It's also timed based on your likelihood throughout the day to go and purchase certain things. So around lunchtime, they'll start pumping out scents of like savory meats and things from the grill and side dishes through these like smell machines that they have. And the use of smell suggestion, it does not stop at this experience of food and purchasing food. It also informs your experience on the rides. Have you ever heard any of that?
I have heard the ride thing. But
that's
I
crazy. You've heard the ride thing
thing
and not the food thing, because I'd never heard of the ride thing. What rides did you hear this for?
A lot of them, like Stitches,
Really?
like Breakout Adventure, like that one, Avatar specifically, the new Avatar Pandora
That you smell
exhibit.
things through it?
Oh yeah, they pump in.
What?
I don't know what it was, but it was like this sweet smelling thing that I think they were trying to make you feel as if you were like on Pandora in Avatar world. A movie that Silas and I did watch, the new one. A very iconic
Watch is
Disney
a loose verb for what we did during that. That sounds inherently sexual. It was not meant to.
No. The movie is very sexual. If you've seen Avatar 2, you get it. There's a lot of water.
There's plenty of water, soaking wet movie.
Soaking wet at Avatar 2. But
Eat poison.
They pumped in and like when you're going on the Flight of the Na'vi, which is like their new attraction.
Yeah.
In order, I think, to calm people down, because it's kind of terrifying. Because the ride is like 3 stories in this warehouse that's overlooking a screen, and you're strapped in with just like a little seatbelt.
It sounds like Soarin'. It sounds like a heightened version of Soarin'.
Because if you poke your head out further, you can see the people above you and below you, but like strapped to like a very flimsy thing, and the screen is massive. And if you look down closer, like to the bottom, it's like an abyss. So to calm
it's
people
just black
down,
painted concrete.
Yes,
just waiting for you to smack it.
Yes, because I had an anxiety attack there because I knew what the ride was. And
the entire time they're just pumping a scent through that you can smell.
They're pumping this like floral scent. Now whenever I smell flowers, I'm triggered.
Well, okay, that's not too different from what Soarin' does. So when I first thought about this, like rides being associated with like certain scents that are pumped out, you think Soarin' because when you ride that, you smell the different smells around like the world, right? Like you smell the breeze of the ocean, and then you smell like fresh cut grass. But what I didn't know is that these scents almost extend to every single ride, like indoor ride in Disney parks. Specifically, I was thinking of the Haunted Mansion. They have curated a specific scent that they pump through that ride, which is known as Breezy Must. That's going to be the name of my first fragrance, the CreepTime fragrance.
I want that. Because
I know.
I know what that smell is. It definitely is something.
But there is a reason for that. So this is what I was getting into about the conspiracy. How now Disney has made like public commentary on this because people are like, this is obviously a real thing. And they always say, well, yes, it is. But it's a part of like our storytelling experience. And that may be true. But the psychology behind it is actually a little more it's interwoven into your long-term experience as like a life cycle customer, like your full life cycle as a Disney park goer. Because the thing about these scents is that they're so visceral and evocative and so consistent, they are unwavering, that every time you go on these rides, you associate the same positive memory that you can just pay to have that exact experience again. And as you get older, the world changes around you constantly. Everything is changing except for your experience at Disney. Everything about these rides and this experience with the rides is the exact same, even down to the smell. That is what's important for keeping you coming back. I think it's partially responsible for why Disney adults continue to go there.
They're
forever.
just huffing that smell.
They're
huffing that must.
They're really just huffers. Disney adults are really just huffers. They're out there.
They're huffing it.
They're looking.
I can say for
they're
sure.
They're trying to find a
the
popper bottle.
Has its own scent for sure, and also the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
That one's included as well. The Monsters Inc. attraction. When you go towards the sushi restaurant, you smell ginger immediately. There's a whole list of rides at Disney that have specific smells that have been curated for those rides. But I did a bit of deep diving on like what is like the public like patent history around this, because there has to be something. So there is a public patent that belongs to a Disney Imagineer. And it's actually quite old, so they've been doing this for a long-ass time. It is known as a smellitizer. That is what this device is called, a smellitizer. Now, it was created by Imagineer, and the patent belongs to Bob McCarthy. It is currently used, publicly, it states this in the patent, throughout the majority of the park, of all parks, to help guide your experience as a purchaser, but also to inform your experience as a positive thing based on which part of the park you are experiencing at any given moment.
Wow.
Is that not fascinating?
That's so fascinating to me. But that kind of makes sense because of like the fervent rides, like and like the lines for the rides, like people clamoring to get on like Splash Mountain or something. Mm-hmm. Like the ride's pretty mediocre, but like why are there so many people like running to the ride? And I think it's definitely regarding that like memory thing of like in that moment.
Yeah, like sense memory.
They had just like this amazing experience and they have to like go back to get it.
It's comforting. Yeah, it's comforting. So it's funny you bring up the lines because that's the second part of this conspiracy about how they're brainwashing your experience to constantly feel positive. So yes, they always want you to have a positive experience, a familiar experience. Something else that I read, and it is actually backed up by some public data, almost every single Disney ride that has a projected wait time or an estimated wait time, because you can get that on your phone now, or they have them like shown in front of the ride, every single one is extremely, extremely overestimated. And part of the reason for that is obviously for crowd control. So what happens is if a ride is starting to develop a line, they will drastically exaggerate the wait time of that ride to try to deter people from going on that ride. So what the computer or the system actually does is it drops the wait times of the other rides nearby that have already been overestimated, but it drops them down to a more realistic number of what the actual wait time might be, because it's trying to get you to walk immediately from that line 100 feet over to the next ride that's right across from it. So the entire thing is strategic based on crowd control and timing, but it is imperative that they always ensure that you have a positive experience while waiting in line. And statistically, you're more likely to feel positive if you go to, like, let's say, Space Mountain and it says 90-minute wait. If you're waiting in that line and you get on that ride in 25 minutes, you're going to feel like you just hit the lotto. Like, you're going to feel like, wow, I got really lucky. That is a curated experience that every guest has every single time.
I knew that was a crock of shit.
Yeah, it's complete bullshit.
Because I've been going to Disney World for a long ass time. And every year it seems as if the number above the line gets bigger and bigger. And my mom and I were like, we're fiends. We're like at it as soon as it opens, and we sprint to get onto rides, to do it multiple times. Like, we're feverish for these rides. And, the rides, the times that they post, like, just aren't correct.
No, it's completely fake.
This last time that I went to Disney World, which was last summer, I remember like leaving one of the rides in the new Star Wars world and being like, this like does not make sense based on me going into this ride 5 times. It says 2 hours. I'm going in and out of this ride. What's going on?
No. It is more than doubled. It is like extremely over-exaggerated. Extremely over-exaggerated.
Extremely over-exaggerated.
Well, okay, so part of how this got uncovered was because of a website called Touring Plans. Have you ever heard of that?
Touring Plans? I don't like the sound of this.
I know. Touring Plans is a website. They have a lot of features on there, but one of them is that they give real-time wait time estimates for rides. But they basically have a formula that takes like what Disney's crock of shit formula is and then subtracts the exaggerated wait time to give you the realistic wait time of what you might actually wait for this ride in this moment. So they basically were the ones who like uncovered the formula of what Disney's wait time system is doing.
That's so helpful.
It is very helpful. Touringplans.com.
Touringplans.com.
Touringplans.com. Now, we've talked about the crowd control thing. We've talked about this like curated experience of like you're not going to feel cheated when you wait there, because if, like I said, if you were to wait in that line and you are waiting there longer than your projected wait time, you're going to have a negative experience. You're going to have a very bad time. Now, those are 2 pretty light urban legend conspiracies, which are more than likely fact, right?
Yeah.
Let's get into something a little bit darker here. Have you heard of the Disney jail?
What? A Disney jail?
You just sounded just like Stu, because I can drop some shit on this podcast and she'll take a pause. She'll go, what? Every time. Yeah, the Disney jail. You've never heard of it?
No, where would the jail be?
Okay. So I had never heard of this either. So when I was doing research for this, I was like, what? So let's see. Now, the earliest stories that I could find about the Disney jail, I think they actually come from the 1990s, and it is this conspiracy, which actually has quite a bit of proof and verification around it, that Disney parks have a designated location, and actually probably multiple locations, where unruly guests have been taken in the past, particularly those who entered the park inebriated or high. So this story that I'm going to tell, it actually comes from a group of friends who attended the park in the late 90s. I'm not totally sure. I can't remember the exact date, but I think it was 1997 that was the year. So they came into the park. I know. Were you even born?
No, not even born yet.
You weren't even born yet?
No.
You were born in 2010?
I was born in 2020.
Wow. You're so advanced.
I know, I'm 3 years old and I'm mega mind.
Adderall. It does a lot of things. Now, let's see. In the 1990s, 1997, all of these teenagers entered the park. They dropped LSD before entering. What a bad fucking time
That's horrible.
that would be.
What
I know.
horrible mistake.
But just like, I would never, ever, ever want to be in a place like Disney dropping LSD. It sounds
With the characters running around?
I would die. But basically, that's what happened. They like made a huge scene, and of course, like Disney is they're not gonna stand for that. So what happened was, they became unruly, and they were removed from the public portion of the park, and they were escorted individually to what is known as the Disney Jail, which is a collection of, get this, you're gonna flip, blank white rooms that contain nothing but a chair and a singular picture of a frowning Mickey Mouse on the wall.
No.
Yes. Could you imagine being on LSD and being put into what is basically like a solitary confinement cell with a frowning Mickey Mouse on the wall?
That just gave me chills.
I know. It gets so much worse, Jack. It gets so much worse. Okay, so this story alleges that they're held in the holding cell, right, for hours, if not the entire day, or at least until they come down from the high, and following that, they would most likely face a ban from the park. Now, before I get into the next part of it, I can tell that already, like, fucked you up a bit. Is that...
I'm still, like, the image in my mind is, like, really, really brutal.
It's freaky. It's freaky as hell. But their story actually gets even crazier because the frowning Mickey Mouse is just the tip of the iceberg of what went down in these Disney jails. And there's actually, believe it or not, there is celebrity confirmation that these places exist. I think
Who got locked up?
Blake Lively.
What?
Gossip Girl's Blake Lively.
What did Blake do? Gossip too much?
I'll get into this in like a second, but basically it was before she was famous, I think. She was a teenager, and back in the day, like in the early 2000s, before everything was automated at Disney, they had a stamp system. So if you came into the park, you paid to get in, and you wanted to like leave to run to your car, they could stamp your hand to get back in. Now, it was really easy to transfer these stamps because you just spray them with hairspray, and then you press it to your friend's hand, and suddenly like you get all your friends into Disney for free. So Disney basically caught them and then ushered them into these back rooms, the Disney jail, it was exactly as was described in the stories. She was like, it's a white room. And like, we sat there and I was like interrogated, and she was banned from like Disney for a year.
Interrogated
For
what?
For coming into the park, for sneaking people into the park for free. She's a con.
Oh my God. You know what?
Ryan Reynolds, run.
Ryan Reynolds better look out because Blake is behind him with a knife.
Well, okay, so let's go back so I can talk a little bit more about what these people experienced in the 1990s in this park. So many of the urban legends of the people who violated the park policies and were placed in these cells, specifically in the 90s, told these strange stories of bizarre protocols and practices that were in force in the Disney jails. So the illusion of Disney is never dropped, even when you're in Disney jail. So park goers who were detained would allegedly talk to security guards, and they were accompanied from cell to cell by people who were dressed up in character.
No.
Specifically, Goofy.
What?
Like
Goofy?
Goofy is like the character who is guiding you from cell to cell and putting you away. And multiple confirmations that once you're left in the cell for hours, you get to just look at this picture of Mickey Mouse on the wall, and they give you a pen and paper, and you are to write an apology letter to Mickey Mouse for your behavior.
That is
dark. It's dark.
That is so incredibly dark. Something about the imagery of Goofy, who's like just a beloved character.
Like a silent Goofy, like having you in cuffs, walking you to a padded room with a frowning Mickey Mouse on the wall. That's a certain type of hell. That's hell.
That is hell. I hate that. Mickey Mouse would never. Actually, he would. Mickey Mouse is.
I was like, be for real. Be for real.
Mickey Mouse has Pluto, which is just Goofy, and keeps him as a pet in his house.
I know. That is really dark to think about a dog owning a dog. That's some shit. Because, like, wasn't Pluto... Yeah, so, like, Pluto is Mickey's or Pluto is Goofy's? Because I was like, that could be something if those two were in the same story.
Pluto's is Mickey's.
Okay, so but Goofy is a dog that's like operating essentially as a human, but Pluto is like a dog.
Yes, so Pluto is the one that has some issues in his like brain that has made him revert to dog form.
What? That is not part of the narrative.
No, it's like I remember reading about this. It's like kind of scary.
Is this like Disney like dark fan fiction or something?
It is because it's never really explained.
Okay.
But the way in which Mickey treats Goofy anyway kind of speaks to his lack of respect towards dog people.
I mean, listen, you don't have to convince me that Mickey Mouse is fucked up. I fully understand what Mickey Mouse is about. He's a bad guy.
He locks people in jails.
He locks people in jail. And can you do the voice? Like, write me an apology letter.
Write me an apology letter right now, you stupid fuck.
That's what they play over the speakers on repeat for hours. But it has like an echo,
really
like reverb.
I mean it.
Well, I had to do more deep diving on this because I'm like, I need to see if there's legitimacy around this whole like Disney jail situation. So I found this website called the Duchess of Disney, which is a site that I think like basically divulges into a lot of the urban legends, but has a lot of historical context and sources accurate information to kind of dispel things or confirm things. And apparently these cells do exist. They're very much real. And one of the most notable is always placed behind Main Street at the front of the park. Now, historically, guests have been taken to these cells for a variety of reasons. They include shoplifting, drinking, excessive drinking, or like being under the influence of drugs, harassment within the park. And part of the reason for this is they try to create a buffer and do a bit of self-governing within Disney because obviously it's a bit of a PR blunder to think of someone being detained, arrested, and hauled out of the happiest place on earth. So this is a way that they can kind of mitigate that by essentially capturing a bad doer within the park, holding them hostage basically for the entirety of the day while the public is out there in the park, and then releasing them at the end of the night.
So essentially they become part of the experience.
Yes. It's
disgusting.
Twofold, because Disney's like, they don't want to have the bad press of like person arrested at Disney, but at the same time, they don't even want to break the illusion that you're in a park. You know, they want it to be like its own. Disney is its own place. It's the happiest place on earth.
And you better not fuck it up for the rest of us.
You absolutely better not. But like I said, so the craziest part about this tale and the urban legend, like it has some truth because of the Blake Lively story. So clearly, not only has the Duchess of Disney confirmed it, but now we have Blake Lively's word.
And I trust Blake Lively.
With your life.
Because she married the sexiest man alive.
She did that, and she also was in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, which are two comparable achievements in my mind with America Ferrera.
I never saw that movie, but I read the books.
Baby, you're living that movie. I hate to tell you. Now, shall we move on to a darker conspiracy? Actually, this isn't a dark conspiracy at all. This is actually a wonderful conspiracy. I hope it's true.
What is it?
This will be like a light, like intermediate filler one. So this is the urban legend that Disney parks, I think both in Florida, but particularly in California, they are their homes to an entire colony of feral cats that live within the park. And Disney is not only aware of this, but actually encourages it. And there's a reason for that. Have you ever heard of that?
No. What?
Yeah, so the history behind this urban legend is that years and years and years ago, there was a small group of cats that essentially burrowed within one of the parks, right? Feral cats, not spayed or neutered. So, you know, this grew and they repopulated very quickly. So much to the point that there were hundreds of cats like plaguing the Disney parks. Feral cats. Now, for obvious reasons, Disney could not just like capture these cats and like surrender them to a bunch of shelters or kill shelters, right, or do something even more sinister like exterminate the cats out of fear of that would be an extremely bad PR nightmare. So Their first logical plan was that they would set up a program, an internal secret program with Disney employees to get all of the cats rehomed with employees, right? Like Disney would take care of the medical expenses for vaccinations. They would get them spayed or neutered. They might even like pay for the first like month of food if you agreed to like take a cat home permanently, right? Seems like a safe solve. Now, Disney had another problem at the time that seemed to crop up at the same exact moment. They had a mouse infestation.
No.
And the irony behind that is incredible. Like,
Mickey.
Disney had a full-on like rodent extravaganza in their parks while they're trying to deal with the cat infestation.
And the fact that I bet Mickey was the one that pulled the trigger. He was like, there's only can be one mouse, and it's me.
Absolutely. I mean,
No, the rest have to die.
You would see very quickly that they were absolutely there to exterminate those mice. And this is how they did it. So the issue of the hundreds of feral cats and this program they were launching of getting them rehomed, it sparked another idea. How could they have a long-term solution for this rodent infestation within the park that seemed impossible to take care of because a park exists outside? And there's a lot of food and there's a lot of stuff in there that like rats would want to get at. So allegedly what Disney did is they decided to embrace the feral cat problem. And they gave them all health checks. They got them all vaccinated. They got them all spayed and neutered so they could control the size, basically, of their cat population. And they set up these covert feeding stations all around the parks, which are visible, apparently visible, in different locations of the park for these cats. So basically, what these feeding stations do, the cats are kept in like secret parts of the park during the daytime when patrons are there. Come night, they release them into the parks and they hunt all the mice all night.
Oh my God, they're let loose.
There's a whole website on this, and they call them cats members of Disney parks.
Oh.
Yes. Isn't that cute?
That's so cute. I hate cats.
No, you don't, Creepers. He's lying.
I do, guys. I'm a dog guy.
What about
person.
Dexter? What about Dexter?
Dexter bites me every time I touch him.
You're a dog person. What are you, hetero? Get out of here.
I'm the straightest man I know.
Enough. All right. On to my next theory. You sound too straight, which is the problem. They're going to tune out. Creepers, I apologize for the heterosexual nature of this podcast.
There's too many straights here. Too many.
Now, let's see. The next conspiracy I have, wasn't that a cute one, though? That was like a very
cute
light
one. Objectively, that was cute.
It's estimated that in each of the parks, both Florida and Anaheim, there are 200 cats, 200 plus cats in each park that
really
live there full time.
See if there's like the visual evidence of like
that's what this website
feeders?
is. No, that's this website. I'll get the name of it in a second, but the website specifically is for park goers who know about the cat colony, and they try to spot them during the day because you can obviously see them at different points, like a random cat running through the park. But also, most of the feeders are very visible. There's one really notable one. I think it's near the Rose Quartz Hotel.
What is the Rose Quartz Hotel?
I don't know. I could be mispronouncing what the name was that I heard, but it's a hotel within Disney.
What? That must be a Disneyland hotel.
It must be.
I've never been there because they turned us away.
well, since you've been 25 times to Disney in the last year alone.
I've been 90 times to Disney.
There was a man who I think just broke the world record or something for the most visits to Disney. He went like every single day for the last 2+ years or something.
Does he have enough time to do that? Like, what's going on there? How is he working?
I think I want to believe he's retired.
Oh, okay.
And maybe he gets like the annual pass, which I think is like $1,500. And if you're going every single day, I suppose it pays for itself.
Well, if he's working remotely, he probably can go to a cafe and, just do his work.
That sounds like absolute hell. To go to Disney World or Disneyland and work from a cafe, I would absolutely die. That's horrible.
There are a lot of empty...
Thank you so much for hopping on. I'm really happy you could connect with me. Sorry, that's just a screaming child behind me. I apologize. Sorry, I'm just getting a corn dog behind you.
Cafes in Epcot, though. That if any park, that would be the park that I would choose because it's not populated a lot, and because they're like slowly phasing out different restaurants because it's so dated, dated. Like there's still like evidence of like the old Figment ride that's like abandoned. That's
Oh God.
very unsettling. But there's all these restaurant cafes that no one ever populates, but they still put all these workers in there and they're doing their jobs. You can go in there and like do probably a full meeting on Zoom and no one would ever bother you.
I kind of believe it. I mean, I have not been to Epcot in over 10 years, possibly close to 15 years, but I vaguely believe what you're talking about.
I was just there for the food festival.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, is Epcot is only in Florida, right?
Yeah, Epcot and Animal Kingdom are the only two, and Hollywood Studios. Those are the
Baby,
three
Animal
that's in-
Kingdom is right in WeHo. You don't have to look no
Yeah,
further.
you're right.
That's it.
I'm
That's
there
Animal
almost
Kingdom.
every weekend.
I know.
If anyone sees someone, hey guys, see if you could spot me. I'm usually wearing army green pants, or like this
and a
Venice cutoff shirt.
and a sleeveless Zara knit top,
I
possibly
love
a pearl
it. I
necklace.
can't get over it. It's my go-to.
It is. It's honestly, it's a uniform. It's repeat imagery. It feels
That's
iconic.
what I feel like when I put it on. I'm like, I'm going to West Hollywood. Time to put on my uniform.
Your uniform. Yeah, you're going to work. You're going to work.
I'm going to work to break some hearts.
Jesus Christ. Well, speaking of hearts, this has nothing to do with hearts, but I'm pivoting into it anyway. The next conspiracy that I've got here, this is probably one of the most popular, so I guarantee you actually know this. And I have had multiple people in my distant family, like cousins who have worked at Disney, who have confirmed that this exists. So the legends of the underground tunnel system of Disney. Let's talk about that. Let's talk.
Yuck.
You don't like that? Why don't you like it?
I hate it. I
Why?
hate the feeling that there's like things like scuttling around underneath my feet when I'm like eating a corn dog. Like I don't like that.
Well, okay, so this is the craziest part. The thing that this is suggesting from like an architecture standpoint is that is the first floor of Disney. That is Disney. The tunnel system, the actual park is the second floor.
Yuck. I hate that. I hate it.
Yeah.
What do you mean it's the first floor? What's there?
So, okay, I'll get into it in a little bit, like how Disney was built, what it was built on. But the story goes back to like when Walt Disney was actually alive. So he would often walk the park himself. I think most people know that because he was so invested in it. He would try to experience every angle of the park from like the guest perspective. So he was in Disneyland, in Tomorrowland, and which is kind of, if you know Tomorrowland, it's kind of this like idyllic, like futuristic landscape. And he ran into a cowboy, like a cast member cowboy. So the cast member, the cowboy, would have to get to a different part of the park where he would be stationed. However, there was no like clear-cut traffic path to get there unless you walked through Tomorrowland. And this like deeply bothered Walt Disney. He felt so complete, like it completely broke the illusion of what the park was, what Tomorrowland was about. And he really felt that it was kind of disruptive for like the immersion of the guests. So it became his mission to try to create this covert system of tunnels that could extend behind the park and underneath the park where cast members could travel as well as other things could go on down there. So that is the bedrock of like what is the suspected history around the tunnel system and why it came to be.
I feel like Walt Disney's so evil.
He quite literally is a very, very evil person, was an evil person. I think he was a confirmed...
He was a fascist sympathizer.
He was an anti-Semite.
And, you know, it's very concerning that he built an empire that now controls 98% of the media that we do consume.
Well, I mean, if there's something to relish in here, I guess, if you're trying to like stick it to Walt, he was so desperately concerned at the time of his death that all of his successors who would take over Disney would just ruin it. It would never be his vision. And there's a lot of proof that they have. So sucks to be Walt.
Sucks to be Walt.
I hope there's no one listening.
Job.
I know. I hope there's nobody who's listening who's like, oh, I happen to love Walt Disney. I'll repeat,
well,
anti-Semite.
You heard it here first. Walt Disney is a piece of shit.
I'll stand, but I'm never going to get booked for Disney because of this. They're gonna.
No, he's really a piece of shit. I stand by Bob Iger. He's a visionary.
Is he?
No, yeah, he actually reinvented Disney. Like everything that you love about Disney, if you were like a '90s kid or a 2000s kid, is because of Mr. Bob Iger. All the media you consumed.
Do you think he knows about the tunnel system? Do you think he's down there?
He probably built even more tunnel systems.
Well, okay, so let me get back to like when this tunnel system came to be and like what we actually know about it from people who've worked there, because I don't believe the employees who work there know the full extent of this system. So,
What?
yeah, it is like you cannot imagine, Jack. You can't imagine how vast this system is. For
What are
context,
they hiding down there?
my cousin said he would have to get enter the tunnel system from a mile outside of the park.
A mile?
A mile outside of the it is insanely vast.
No.
Let me get into the details here. So it has never been confirmed that Disneyland has a tunnel system just from the way the land is built and just how challenging that would be. They definitely have backstage areas and like secret passageways and things to kind of keep things covert, but a tunnel system is really the whole premise of that has to do with the Orlando park, right? The construction of that. So according to sources online, the tunnel system spans more than 300,000 square feet beneath Magic Kingdom. So the craziest part about this tunnel system is that Disney World was built on a swamp in Florida. So like I was saying, the way that they built this was they laid the foundation and then the tunnel system came to be. So this is from the bedrock of like when Disney was coming up, like Orlando. And it was conceived as that is the entry floor. Like that is like first floor of Disney. And the part above it is considered the second story. Even though that's what everyone knows as the ground. So now I think the conspiracy of the tunnel seems like pretty harmless at surface level because it seems obvious like why you would want to have a system like that. It's very easy for cast members to cross the park and not be seen. It's just so extensive that I think that's what feels insidious for people. It's like what you're saying. It's like, what the hell goes on down there in this system? The tunnel is really interesting because it is a no man's land in terms of the branding rules of Disney. Have you ever heard that?
No. What?
So apparently none of the Disney branding rules against employees are enforced in the tunnel system. It's like the Vegas of Disney down there. Like people are allowed to be in and out of costume. People smoke down there. They can drink, allegedly. This is all alleged. They play music that's not Disney music. And apparently it is so vast down there, Jack. There is an extensive series of rest areas, places to eat, and even a full service salon that sits below the underground of Disney. It is an underground city.
Is terrifying to me.
It's a city down there, and all these debaucherous cast members are down there just in this seedy pit beneath Disney.
Well, I have seen things on TikTok where it's like there's like people making TikToks with their costumes that they're not working for Disney anymore. It's like years after, and then they like post it now. They're like, look what we did. And they're always like in these weird rooms. And I'm like, where is this?
Well,
Maybe
okay, so
it's
this
the
is where
tunnels.
it's most definitely the tunnels. Well, yeah, that's how you enter. You can't enter the park through the front entrance if you're a worker there. That's what my cousin told me. But naturally, with the lore of the tunnel system, there is this extensive, there's these stories of like what went on down there. The public knowledge of that became pretty widespread. So instead of trying to keep it a secret, Disney kind of leaned into this and tried to create an illusion of what the tunnels actually are and how it's not as insidious as most people think. So what the branding team did, they created a curated backstage experience, which is only for like elite guests, like guests who could pay a certain amount or celebrities, where they give you a tunnel tour, which shows you like a very extremely limited backstage walk. So you can be like, oh my God, I'm in the Disney tunnels. It's essentially like a 200-foot walkway of what is like hundreds of thousands of square feet down there that you're not seeing.
Oh my God.
To make you think like this is where our cast members, and like obviously like the part that the public gets to see, like guests, it's a very like cleaned up version of it where like obviously that's off limits to cast members who are in and out of costume. Like they're not going to break the illusion if a guest is down there. So it's specifically for these tours. Like employees do not even go over there.
But like, what if there's something crazy down there? Like, I'm just imagining like dark, dim tunnels and like abandoned wings.
There are certainly parts of it that are closed off to employees. Like there's definitely like a key card thing where only employees of a certain status can get past certain tunnels. And there's actually an epicenter of this tunnel system. So in the dead center, specifically, I think it's under Magic Kingdom, there is apparently a limited access control room where only high level managerial employees can get into, which has a vast array of screens of the above ground park and all of these control systems so that you can control and see every square inch of that park at any time from this hive, this underground hive.
And do what? Like, what are they watching for?
I think they're just always watching, Jack. They're just always
watching. Maybe that's like, because that's a really iconic line. Maybe it's like they're admitting.
They're dropping hints, yeah.
They're dropping hints.
So Roz is the one who's at the epicenter of the Disney tunnel system.
It's Roz.
Roz.
A giant slug.
I love her. She's iconic.
I love her glasses. They're nice and thick.
You sound just like her.
I'm Roz.
You should be here for Halloween. You should be here for Halloween in WeHo. I think that would go over really well.
A giant slug at Rocco's. It's gonna be great.
Babe, you can go to Rocco's any day of the week and find a giant slug. It does not have to be Halloween. Right. It doesn't have to be Halloween.
I can look myself in the mirror at the bathrooms of Rocco's and see a giant slug.
Oh, yeah. You have 4 tequila sodas. You look right in that mirror under fluorescent lighting. That's a giant slug. That's a slug that's had salt poured on it. That's what that is.
Oh, my God.
Now
that is horrendous. I don't like the feeling of having like tunnels. Like that's a huge fear of mine. There's a very liminal space. It's something that I'm really scared about.
Imagine getting lost down there if you were an employee or something.
You'd never be seen again.
If you were a patron, imagine like somehow you snuck down there and you get lost in the underground tunnel system. This dark tunnel system. It's like a catacomb.
A catacomb. There probably are like catacombs. Walt Disney's probably down there, dead.
Well, we have some other conspiracies specifically around that.
What?
Well, Walt specifically. Well, okay, let's see. So I don't even know what comes next in my notes. It just says, now let's get a bit darker. That's the headline I wrote for this.
Great. I can't wait.
And I have no idea what this is about. Now
let's get darker.
Oh, wait. I think I cut this. This is about like a conspiracy side of fiction. Oh, this was all about like a secret society of people who like own Disney, but it's kind of boring. So I was like, I don't even really care to talk about it. But the top line of that is that I think back in the day when Walt was around, he didn't want Disney to kind of start and stop as just, I don't know, this refuge for the guests. It was supposed to be like a hub for the world elite. And he belonged to quite a few like elite clubs. And one of them, I think, was the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. I'm just riffing right now of like what I, off of memory, which was like basically a club of millionaires who were like globetrotters. Like they just love to travel internationally. They're high profile people. And there's all these like hidden clues within the park that the original rides of the park were basically created, curated, and are actually on paper owned by the former members of this society, the SEE, or the SEA rather. So I was like, that's not even really a conspiracy. I was like, it just sounds like I don't know. It just sounds like a boys' club.
Yeah, it just sounds like a classic 1940s boys' club. That probably used the 8 Club. Like that's like the exclusive thing in Disney World and Magic Kingdom where you can only like it's like a $10,000 for like I don't know a meal. But to be in the club is like very specific, and not every guest can get there. Probably was connected.
Is that called the 8
somehow.
Club or is it called the 33 Club?
The 33 Club, that one. Yeah.
Okay, I heard about the 33 Club. Yeah. Because that does like there are locations specific to that, and there's a lot of conspiracy around like why the number 3 is important to Walt, and it has to do with like Mickey's ears. It's a whole thing. Anyway, it's. I'm not even going to attempt to do the voice because I've been drinking, so who knows what's going to happen to me. But let's put that conspiracy to bed and let's get into the real shit.
It's about to get scary.
Well, it's about to get real because I guarantee you have heard of this because it is probably the most famous conspiracy around Disney, that Walt Disney is frozen or preserved in some way. Have you heard that?
He's somewhere in there. Of course I have.
Of course you have, yeah, because it's possibly like the most, I want to say it's like the conspiracy of Disney that's permeated the cultural zeitgeist. Like most people just associate Walt Disney now as being frozen. So I wanted to do a deep dive on it.
Why
to
did
see
they
if
make
it was
the
true.
movie Frozen? They're dropping hints.
Exactly. Well, so there's a lot of conspiracy around that, specifically why Disney puts out certain titles to try to like, from an SEO perspective, to try to deter what people search. When they search Disney Frozen, you would get the movie now versus getting something about how Walt Disney is preserved somewhere.
Oh my God,
isn't that crazy? It's kind of like it's like as if Michael Jackson was to put out like a greatest hits album and it's called Michael Jackson and the Kids, like a Jackson 5 reunion album. It's to deter the search results. You know what I mean?
You're right, and that's horrible.
I know. There must be other examples. Let me think. I can't say them. They're all really bad.
They're all horrible.
They're all really bad, but I'll really leave it at the Michael Jackson one. But I mean, that's a very like legitimate thing that you could have put out something. They could put out like entertainment titles that would deter search results so that they can pivot away from bad PR stories that won't go away.
Right.
Now, let's go back and get into some of the history around this. So, I believe it was the late 60s. Yes, the late 60s when Walt fell extremely ill. So they had found a mass in his lung, and it was cancerous. So it
was in the shape of Mickey Mouse.
Please, absolutely enough. Absolutely enough.
I had to transfer myself onto my bed because what I was drinking hit me hard 5 minutes ago, and I was like, I have to sit down.
I hope by the end of this, I kept you on this pod for a while. I feel like you'll be blackout by the end of it.
No.
But the Creepers love long episodes like this. I put out a poll and I was like, how long do you want the episodes to be? Like 45 minutes, 60 minutes, or like 90 minutes to 2 hours plus? And almost every single person voted for 2 hours plus.
2 hours plus. They're doing like homework and stuff or like working out.
Yeah, no, they all like send me messages and they're like, I fall asleep to your podcast. And I'm like, that's incredible that we do that for you. When we talk about people having like children ripped out of their stomach. Like, it's incredible that we're able to give you that experience. And I cherish that. I do.
Oh my God.
Now, so Walt falls extremely ill. They found a mass on his lung. It was cancer. They removed the entire lung, Jack. He had a complete removal of the lung.
And he
now, this wine is sending you someplace else. I need you to get a grip.
Me where I need to be. It's actually Disney. I actually work for Disney, and that's why my brain subconsciously is making me change the subject as we get closer and closer to the truth.
Because you can't handle it. Yeah, because I'm getting heavier and darker real quick, and you're like, no, go back to the cat shit. I want to hear about the cat colony.
The cat colony. Let's go back to the cat colony, girl. Let's do it.
Well, okay, so the story behind this is that the lung gets removed. He's in the hospital, and in the following like month, he would, get a lot of his affairs together. He's like organizing his will. He's going through cancer treatments, and eventually, not long after that, it's like a month, his entire circulatory system just completely failed. Allegedly, that's what happened on paper. So on paper, he is pronounced dead at age 65. Now, years and years later, I think this is where the first cryoconspiracy came about, that Walt Disney may have died and may have been frozen, or it's possible he was close to death and did not die, but opted to have his body frozen while he was alive. So there is a more like infamous version of this story, I think, where Walt only had his head cryogenically frozen.
That's the thing that I've heard.
Yeah. And the reason being is I think the assumption that like maybe the physical body, especially if it was already, riddled with cancer, could not be resurrected one day, but the human brain possibly could if it was put into a mechanical body. Is like very, very early like pseudoscience of cryogenics, of like the idea is way, way ahead of any sort of realistic science that could do that.
Right.
So I should clarify actually, because I believe there's a difference between cryogenics and this specifically is cryonics that we're referring to. So cryonics, I think, specifically has to do with the storage of human remains, dead human remains, at frozen or very low temperatures, and it includes this intention, this long-term intention that you're eventually going to resurrect that person or that body once it's medically possible.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, we could talk about some of the legal loopholes around this and why this was probably maybe unrealistic at the time. So cryonics when it comes to that, even back in the 60s when this had first emerged, which I think was 1960, and Walt died in 66, I think, legally, the person cannot be subjected to cryonics while they are alive. They have to be legally pronounced dead in order for this to happen in any scenario. But I would say that it's not off the table to assume that somebody as powerful, as connected, and as wealthy as Walt Disney would have the power to, I don't know, probably make an arrangement to have this done while he was still alive, if that was something he wanted to do.
Absolutely. He was obsessed with living forever.
Yeah, I think he was more so fearful of death, was what I read. He had an intense fear of death because when he was a child, he saw a fortune teller who just told him he was going to die at 34. So he was terrified of that. Could you imagine getting into your late 20s and your 30s and reach nearing 34 and just this intense fear that you're about to go. And even when he passed that, he still had deep-seated issues and fears with death. So you're kind of right. He wanted to live as long as possible.
And that fortune teller, that was Cher.
What a fucked up fortune teller, just to talk to an 8-year-old and be like, 34.
Honey, you're gonna die. You're gonna die at 35, babe.
Babe, I'm sorry, I don't see it going much longer. Me and son, we got a show, but I think you're gonna kick it at 34. Do you believe in life after love? Because I sure don't. You're sure, dead, bitch. This shit is off the rails.
Oh my God.
The problem, okay, let's talk about cryonics and why this is not really realistic in terms of could you possibly resurrect a brain? The thing that happens when you freeze a human brain, especially long term, you cannot do so without causing permanent damage to the neurocircuits of a brain. So there's really no way that this is ever going to work, I think. But still, I think if you're on the brink of death, like Walt was, maybe the thought is why not try? So,
you're right.
Yeah, I know I'm right. I know.
You're right.
So like I said, cryonics and cryogenics had started in the early 60s. So timing-wise, this probably would have aligned, with statements that were coming out about this new science and who it might be tailored to the elite. But the stories about Walt and what he did not really come out in any major literature or publications until the 80s. And that's when people started to take an interest in this. And that's when these things detailed his interest, his public interest in cryonics that he had told people in the 60s, which is where I think the rumor came from. It's people were no, we confirmed that he was looking for this and hoping to one day, if he was going to be frozen, that he would, I don't know, probably be resurrected at some point. But the thing that this literature is talking about, it's saying that Walt, not only was he afraid of death, but he was terrified that his successors would inevitably inflict horrible damage on his vision of the Disney parks. And it turns out that he was right, like I said, because what I didn't know is that Epcot was never supposed to be what it is. Did you know that?
I heard that it was supposed, but I don't know what he
It was supposed to be a city. It was supposed to be a self-contained, self-governing utopian city. And then by the time
Florida, I'm so sorry, but that would not have flown. That would have not flown in Florida.
That would not have flown at all.
That word, what did I just say?
Flying is a word that no human being has ever said.
Until now, you heard it here first. The CreepTime podcast with Silas Dean.
I have to sit up because I'm literally hunched over. Okay.
I'm slumped over. I'm hungover, babe. Flying.
Yeah, flying. So now the problem was, Walt, he had this vision that it was going to be this self-contained city, and he was terrified that if he died, somebody was going to fuck the whole thing up. And it turns out they absolutely did, because as soon as he did die, the Epcot was not finished. The project was not finished, but it was picked up by the successors, and they were like, a city? Well, that doesn't sound like it's going to make money. Let's just make it a park. So they made it into a park. So this was the problem, but that's besides the point, because we're talking about Walt being frozen. So let's say he was frozen. The issue with a lot of these companies that cropped up in the 60s when cryogenics and cryonics became a thing was that they all fizzled out by the 70s, except for, I think, one company. And I don't even know if they were around beyond the 70s. But the problem, and I was like, what happened to these people who like paid to be frozen? They had to be thawed and released to the government.
What?
Yes, because like if these companies were fizzling, like there are like legal protocols for what you have to do with human remains. The bodies, these people paid to be frozen and then one day resurrected. They had to be thawed. They had to be thawed.
That's what you get when you do it in Florida. I'm sorry. Florida is a kingdom of cheats and liars and swindlers.
Well, it's also, talk about these companies. How would this even sustain itself? Because the person who is funding it is now a person who's technically dead on paper. So you would assume that like all the companies, of course, would eventually fold. Like the economy of these companies cannot last to the point where science catches up and suddenly we can bring these people back.
Imagine like the cleanup crew.
I don't even want to
like the company's going under and they have to thaw it out, and it's just like tubes of people.
Tubes. Apparently, a lot of them are kept in the same tubes, which I don't know how that works.
Oh my god, what a scam! Sounds like a scam.
I know, bitch. They're just putting you in a tub of water in a freezer. Let me just tell you, I've worked in restaurants. It's just a restaurant freezer. It's a restaurant freezer.
It's a big old walk-in.
It's a walk-in, and it's off from the prep station of the kitchen. That's where you're being stored with cryonics. But we should talk about like why this could have been possible for Walt, even in the scenario where all these companies folded, because Walt isn't just a normal person. Like his legacy and his fortune clearly extends beyond his life. So it's not unreasonable to think that there could have been some sort of a private arrangement, like a long-term arrangement, where there's like an account through Disney, like a Disney fund, where there is just money that is funding maybe like a single cryo company that could have retained just Walt's body and possibly still does to this day. So for even more context on this, so here's why it's a little strange. Now, obviously, this got out of hand, this conspiracy, and people started to ask questions to Disney specifically, so much to the point that his daughter had to make a public statement, and she had to say he is absolutely not frozen. He had never had any interest in that. He did not express that he even knew what that was. But it's not unreasonable to think, if we're looking at this as a conspiracy, that Walt had to keep this completely private for the protection of his corpse, even from his own family. Because if there was any semblance that the truth of this could get out, he could compromise the possibility of his remains being preserved. Because let's say like there's, I don't know, vandals, or like there's a conspiracy for people to like break his remains out of this cryo chamber, and suddenly the remains are useless because they've not been frozen or preserved. There's no chance of him ever coming back. So maybe that's where the secret... Yeah. He had to keep this super down low. Now, what his family remembers is that he passed, and then he wrote in his will that he didn't want to have a funeral. He wanted no service, and they actually delayed the announcement of his death so that his family could have a private viewing with just his body on the day he died. And then the body was allegedly taken away very quickly to his wishes, and on paper, it was cremated. It's not off the table with this conspiracy to assume that the body was whisked away, and then this private cryo company that was prepaid did what they were going to do, which was preserve that body.
Oh, that gave me chills. It's so scary.
I know, or at least part of the body. But the story gets even wilder because people would question, okay, well, let's say all of that's true, and there is this like privately funded cryo company that's like anonymously hosting his remains. Where is the body? They must have like headquarters or something. That would be a risk. Now, where is the one place where you could build a secret cryo chamber that you would have complete jurisdiction over, no one ever searching?
One of his wonderful, beautiful parks.
The underground tunnel systems of Disney.
Oh my God. I hate it. I hate it.
No. It's more likely probably somewhere in Disneyland because he was dead before the Orlando park came about.
But like, just think of like the swamp of like Florida. It's a bog, and like the remains of people have been pulled out of swamps, completely preserved as if they died like that day, and they're thousands of years old. What if he's buried in a bog?
Well, it's funny you say that because most of this conspiracy, if we're talking about like where the fake cryo or where the cryo chamber is, if it's in Disneyland, a lot of people think it's under the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, which is partly the reason why the ride has never been touched. Ever. They have never updated that ride since its inception.
What?
Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland? That is like the longest standing ride in the entire park. So the conspiracy is that underneath the water, deep, deep down, is like a hidden chamber which hosts a permanent like cryo tank that holds Disney's body.
Oh my God. So I hate it. I hate that.
Could you imagine if something goes wrong and you're just on that
water?
peaceful ass ride and like all of a sudden this giant ice cube of Walt Disney floats up to the top?
Or even scarier, you look down into the depths of the water.
Oh,
and you
God.
see his head looking back at you.
Does anyone know how deep that water goes? I'm very curious about what is in that. I mean, also to think about how disgusting that water must be. That's like decades and decades old water, I'm assuming.
That ride scares the shit out of me.
It's not a healthy place to be. It's not healthy to be in there. It's
because
cancerous.
if you're on that ride and you look and you're on like the boat, right? There are other like little channels of water that the boats that don't have people on go into. And there's a couple of them throughout the ride. Mm-hmm. And I'm always wondering like, well, what's behind there? Where do these boats go?
Mm-hmm.
They're going into the chamber where Walt is.
Somebody's tending to it. I'd be very curious to hear about any of the Anaheim Park employees who have had any experiences with this rumor in particular, and like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride hosting the body of Disney. There's also rumor that actually I don't even know if this was a rumor, but like back in the day, one of the skulls, like the skulls that was seen on the ride, was an actual human skull.
I've heard that, and it's true.
I believe it is. I mean, that wasn't very. It depends on when the ride was created, but this is actually a really common thing that used to happen in Hollywood. I read about a while ago, where it was a lot more expensive to make prop skeletons as opposed to buying actual human cadaver skeletons from like a medical supply company. That was a lot cheaper. Like people who donated their bodies to science. Imagine you donate your body to science and you think it's going to go towards like cancer research, like finding a cure for something, and you just end up on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Forever.
Above a bunch of plastic booty. Like just plastic jewels. You're probably stapled into like a wall. Like you're hot glued up there.
Haunted. Like I feel like a lot of the Disney stuff is haunted.
It has bad vibes for sure. But that is the conspiracy around Walt. Do you believe or do you not believe?
I believe it for sure.
I believe.
I mean, he's so rich and he's so afraid of death, and the only other thing that's like kind of like this weird 1950s 40s like dream or 60s dream is like it's just that era, the 1900s, like the latter half is like self-preservation in the face of like nuclear destruction. So how do we like protect ourselves from that? We build a bunker underneath what he deemed is probably like the utopia, and then or he freezes himself because he's like, oh, of course, like in the future, this makes sense. But they're dumb and they don't realize that like they're killing their brain cells by freezing it. They're just killing themselves. Or
maybe it's just, I mean, it's his last resort, really. I mean, if they're telling him like you've got a month left of your life, you might freeze. If you're terrified of death, you might freeze yourself.
If Walt came back, if he just somehow reappeared, I think he'd actually die of shock. He'd see some gay people in this park getting proposed, some Disney adults running down the street, tackling him.
I hope nobody thinks that this podcast is homophobic, and I hope they get who the hosts are.
No, I think
they
this
just see
podcast
some
is
gay people.
Extremely homophobic. I'm a straight guy, obviously.
Oh, you're gonna make me lose every single sponsor. Okay, I'm gonna get off the Walt Frozen thing because I'm tired of him. I'm gonna get into some
Let it go.
Honey, I let it go a long time ago when Son and I split up from Vegas. Anyways, let's get into the dark stories. I'm gonna talk about suicides at Disney.
No. No.
Now, this is an unconfirmed urban legend, but it's actually attached to a picture, which I can send you at some point. Now, this does get substantially darker. It is reported that back in 1999, there was a very specific event that happened at Disney, specifically within a small world. Have you ever heard that story?
No, what was the event?
No, the story is recounted by I think it was a woman who was telling the story, and she remembered something from her childhood when she was maybe 8 or 9, riding a small world with her parents. So while they're riding on the ride, everything is fine. I find that ride so deeply disturbing. I think it's horrific.
It's so dark.
It's incredibly dark. But if you remember anything specific about that ride, this may not be the case now, but back in the day, the uniform of the people who worked the ride was red overalls. Now, this girl was riding the ride with her parents, and everything's fine, when all of a sudden she remembered the boat stopped, the music stopped, the floodlights came on, all of the ceiling lights, and immediately employees came out to usher everybody off the boats, and someone came over the intercom, and they said something to the effect, they were like, "Thank you for joining us today at Disney Parks. Please, see the attendants who will help you to exit the ride and safely exit through these side doors." And they specifically say on the intercom, "Keep looking forward. Keep looking forward."
No.
Now, before they were ushered off the ride, her mom actually had a wind-up, some kind of a film camera or something, but she had 2 pictures left on it, and you have to go through the entire roll before you can get it developed. So everybody just knows your last few pictures are bullshit pictures. She was just taking random pictures, and she happened to take one while the camera was flipped up, and it was of the ceiling. Now, nobody really knew what happened that day in 1999 after they were, ushered off and what was going on in there. Eventually, when they get those pictures developed, they look at the picture of the ceiling that was accidentally taken. Directly above them on the ceiling is a person hanging from the rafters in red overalls.
No. I hate it.
A park employee. It is in a small world, it is such a sinister, eerie picture to look at.
How did they get up there?
I don't know. It reminded me a lot of the urban legends of the Wizard of Oz, that in the film, one of the Munchkins hung himself, and it was actually caught on screen and made it into the final cut of the movie. I think that was eventually dispelled, or either that or it was edited out and remastered. But it's very much that feeling of something went wrong and something was inadvertently captured while on a ride, the small
that is
world.
So disturbing.
It's disturbing.
So
I know. Is it though? It's a small world.
I mean, the I can't even talk. I'm so afraid.
Well,
the little dolls are broken half the time, so they're all twitching. They're not moving how they used to, because the ride's really old.
There is some creepy employee conspiracies about those dolls. A lot of people who work that ride say that sometimes they come there in the morning and the dolls are in different locations, which is freaky.
No,
the dolls are in different places. Which is scary. I know. No.
I don't want it. I don't want to think that way.
Well, let's get into something even darker on this note about Disney park employee suicides. This is when I'm going to get into Disney Paris.
I'm going to have so many nightmares.
I know. Euro Disney. I'm getting into Euro. Listen, I kept this actually relatively light. From the things that I was reading about some stuff that I would say borders on dark fan fiction. I read some horrific story about someone going to the abandoned resort of Disney, and they find a back room where there's a Mickey, someone in a Mickey costume in there alone. It literally
dead?
No,
just sitting
alive,
there. What?
On the ground, and then gets up. When I heard the story last night, I was literally, my heart was racing. I should read it to you on the podcast at some point, but it was freaking me out you could not imagine. And they were I found this Mickey costume, but it didn't look like a normal Mickey costume. It was inverted, as if it was a negative photograph, and completely tattered and had patches on it from decay. And then suddenly the costume starts moving. There's somebody inside it who's in that abandoned resort dressed as Mickey Mouse.
It's James Charles.
That would be the only thing that would make me feel like I would have a leg up in that situation.
No, but James Charles is so tall, so that would be really scary.
He's extremely tall. Extremely. I've seen him in person. Now,
Hey, sisters.
Hey, sisters. Get ready
you
with
do
me
the voice great.
for my 23rd birthday. No, let's get back into Disney Paris, aka Euro Disney.
Oh my god.
Now, this was not the only instance that I was referring to of Disney cast members and employees who were committing or attempting suicide within the parks. Now, I mentioned before that when Euro Disney came to be, Euro Disney was not fully owned by the Disney Corporation, which became a problem for like the managerial process of like how the park was being run. So when you get these people who don't know how to run theme parks and don't know how to manage workers under those conditions, you get some severe exploitation because budget cuts come in because everybody gets concerned about the bottom line. Now, at the time, there were confirmations of a lot of stories coming from labor unions about just how bad Euro Disney was exploiting the people who worked there. I mean, extreme. And then all of a sudden, these stories start coming out about this bizarre, subservient culture that Disney as an entity was perpetuating in the Euro Disney park. So the story is that this has, in combination of all of these things, has long attributed to some of the most morbid catastrophes of cast members that they inflicted upon themselves while they were working at Euro Disney. One of which upon themselves. So this is where it gets into like some of like the psychological breaking of the, and this again, this is a conspiracy, but parts of this are backed up by substantial fact. Now, one of these instances would include one of the Disney chefs who apparently was so overworked, he jumped in front of a train and and then almost immediately after, I think the day after, another chef also committed suicide from working in the Disney park. And it's not clear if he committed suicide in the park because Disney would never publicly admit to that. But his father apparently went to news outlets to say that after his son committed suicide, he went to his apartment to like move things out. And what he found etched into the wall, was scratched with a fingernail, said, "I do not want to go back to Mickey's."
What?
I do not want to go back to Mickey's.
Where is Mickey's?
Like, just referring to Disney, like
no,
Mickey
no,
Mouse.
No.
Yeah, like it's a psychological twisted grip that the park had on these exploited, overworked employees. And this bizarre phenomenon of employee suicides seemed to continue when a gardener at Disney, I think that same year, was called into an office or reprimanded or something by his boss at Euro Disney, proceeded to leave the office, doused himself in gasoline, and attempted to light himself on fire in broad daylight in the middle of the park. Luckily, somebody tackled him before he could do that. So this was an attempt and he did not complete it. But because of all of these bizarre instances, there was this massive overhaul where Disney invested tons of money. They cleared out all management and they took the reins and they said, we're going to run this like a theme park. There is no way we can continue with whatever's going on here. Like, there is very clear and dark exploitation happening. So you can't really, I don't know if I could say that Disney was at fault, but clearly there was like outside management that was enforcing some bizarre internal Disney culture that was like preying upon the psyche of overworked people.
Oh my God, that's incredible though, that like the real Disney stepped in and was like, "You're hurting our brand," and then saved it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, it might just more so be like them saving their own ass, because it could be. I mean, their name is attached to it. It's a Disney park, so you can't really have employees like jumping in front of trains and like lighting themselves on fire.
Find some advertising for Euro Disney and like see what it looked like, because I can't even wrap my head around what that could look like.
Bonjour, welcome to Euro Disney. Wasn't that great?
That was, yeah, it's, well, when I was there, it was very much like, it's just a smaller Magic Kingdom. It really, it's just Magic Kingdom and it's small.
It's just downsized, yeah.
And there's like the Hollywood Studios part. It's just not that, it's just a carbon copy of it. It's like not that impressive.
Did you know that Hong Kong Disney, they have a haunted mansion, but they're not allowed to call it the Haunted Mansion?
Yeah, it's like the Phantom House or something.
No. They're not allowed to reference ghosts. So I was learning this while I was doing research. There's a cultural distinction, I guess, in most parts of China where referring to ghosts in that way, I don't know if it's considered disrespectful, but it's culturally inappropriate. So Haunted Mansion is called like Mystic Manor or something. in Mandarin, and it has absolutely nothing to do with like being haunted or ghosts or anything like that. It's just like interesting artifacts in this old house.
Oh, that's so boring.
I know, but I kind of want to see it. I want to find a video.
I do want to go see Shanghai Disneyland because they're like so technologically advanced in the park with
Are
the
they
projection
really?
system
Oh shoot.
and like the money that they threw at the set pieces. It's supposedly like stunning.
I bet it would be beautiful. That might be the last thing that I would do if I ever went to Disney in China, or if I ever went to China. I think Disney would be like off the table, probably. I feel like I'd have better things to do.
Yeah, but I am a sucker for Disney because I want to. The smells bring me back those memories, and I need to go smell what the Shanghai's all about.
Did you ever see those casting calls for like working in like Disney Shanghai as a prince? I used to get those all the time.
I? Yes.
Yeah. Have you
yes.
auditioned for it? You gone up for it?
No, I would rather eat glass.
Wait, I think you could play. You could be a great Disney prince. I feel like we could play those. That can't be that hard. You just have to be like
And wear the
decently
wigs
tall.
that they give us? No. I've never seen.
That's where you draw the line, the
Prince
wigs.
use their actual hair. It's always some weird wig from Party City.
Which is strange because if we're talking about the tunnel system and that full service salon, I thought the salon was so you could keep the haircuts of the princes and princesses.
No.
Could not have been louder. You got what you got? No. Now, Mr. Jack, I'm going to wrap us up here with our final urban legend. Are you ready? We've gone on for quite a bit about these. I feel like we've gone through the Rolodex of Disney urban legends.
We're going to be banned from Disney.
Oh, you think I'm getting a brand deal after this? I was
never
hoping to
working
like
for them, I guess.
I was hoping to tap my management and be like, "Can you get me to the premiere for The Mandalorian?" You think that shit's happening for me?
That already happened.
I know. No, they're going to have another one. The LA one happened. I was like, maybe the New York one. Will they fly me out? I could do the carpet. That's not going to happen for me. Not
Mickey's
a chance.
listening right now. I know what you said.
Why is Mickey considered the most sinister Disney character in the Disney universe? I feel like there must
Because
be...
he's a capitalist.
But there have to be like other cartoon Disney characters that feel creepier than him. Like, I don't know about like Donald Duck. I don't know about him.
No, Donald Duck is not someone to be feared at all.
Goofy
He's just a
also
duck.
scares the shit out of me. Goofy scares
Who?
Goofy scares the shit out of me.
Well, have you heard the conspiracy about Goofy?
No. What do you mean?
So Goofy supposedly, I'll find the video. It was crazy. Goofy.
it was crazy, guys.
It's crazy, guys. Listen to this. Goofy's actually hyper intelligent and is smarter than anyone in the cast of characters.
Okay.
And he dumbs himself down to get what he wants, because no one would ever suspect Goofy to being evil or anything, because he's putting on an act. It's an act, Silas. I'll find you this video, and there's like evidence in like the Goofy movies that he's putting on an act.
Oh, that's eerie. I don't know if I like that. I don't like the idea of like animated characters having hidden agendas that I'm not aware of. I don't like that.
Oh my god, these animated characters have full autonomy. They're real.
I can't deal with the
Soon
sentiment
there's going to
of
be
that.
AI Disney characters that will just speak for themselves.
Why is it that these characters, like, they feel inherently scary to me. If I was to see someone in a Mickey Mouse costume, like at night somewhere, do you know how deeply haunting that would be for me? Why is that? Why is it? Is it because it's like out of context of where it's like, liminal's not the right word, but it's uncanny to see that out of the context that I'm expecting it. Is that why maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not how it's usually presented.
Yeah, not a fan of that. Well,
I'm not a fan of you.
Jesus Christ.
What's
Let's
the
get
last
it.
one?
We're going to get into the last urban legend. And I feel like I should have ordered them differently because I think the suicide ones were heavier than this one, but maybe not. This one's pretty damn dark, and it is allegedly, almost verifiably true that this did happen.
Oh my god.
Now, this is the next couple of legends. I don't know if there's multiple here, but I guess we'll find out. Now, the next couple of legends have to do with with an abandoned portion of the Disney park system. And the first one I want to talk about is the project of Treasure Island. I feel like it was supposed to be Pleasure Island. I'll have to recheck my research on that. So this was a small island that Disney had secured right off the coast of Florida, which would be turned into Treasure Island, which has kind of had this theme of like a pirate's refuge. Like that was the vibe that they were going for when they were constructing it, right?
Tortuga.
Exactly. But it later turned into more of like a zoological experience, and they renamed it Discovery Island, which I'd never heard of this. This was like well before my time. Now, the draw of that would have been an extension to the Florida parks where like you could go and see wild and tropical animals, right?
Right.
Now, this is very, very well documented, this. So there is quite a bit of truth to this, of some of the disturbing and unsanctioned animal killings that took place within Discovery Island under Disney's watch. So the problem emerges from wild vultures. So they had these like wild animal sanctuaries, right? And wild vultures were just basically landing there, and they were taking over the park. And for various reasons, it might have been like they were there for food or whatever. That would have been a problem, like a safety issue for park goers. So Disney had to pull some legal loopholes to secure a permit in Florida to capture and safely relocate 100 of these wild vultures. They were allowed to do it for 100 of them. There were hundreds. Now, something much, much darker happened here. So the initiative failed, and eventually an investigation was opened in the 80s, which showed that park employees had been viciously killing these vultures. They were trapping them and beating them to death. And they were destroying nests. They were crushing eggs, crushing their heads. And these vultures, the ones that they did catch, I guess they had caught like... They were legally permitted to catch 100 of them, and they had apparently captured more than 200 of them, 70 of which were found alive and had been crammed into windowless sheds with no air ventilation and almost no food or water. Sheds that were basically spaced and sized for the capacity of 3 vultures max. 70 in one of those.
No.
Like unbelievably horrific animal conditions and abuse. Now, following the conclusion of the investigation by 1989, the extent of the animal cruelty was unimaginable, and there was a host of specific employees who were operating Discovery Island who were charged for a total of 16 counts, I believe, of federal animal cruelty.
As they should.
Yeah, well, listen to this. So this is when Disney, I guess, jumps in to the conversation because they don't want this coming out as like a PR blunder or something.
Right.
So they were able to basically negotiate a legal loophole around this where they're like, we can funnel money into this and we can clean up our act for sure, but we have to drop the charges on these employees. All charges were dropped because Disney agreed to this, and Disney never had to admit any wrongdoing, even though hundreds of these animals were like viciously caught and beaten under their directive. So the park was actually still allowed to operate, I think, for more than 10 years after this all went down, until eventually in 1999, it just completely vanished. I think it was due to like worsening states of the weather and the climate. Like it was repeatedly getting hit by hurricanes, and it was no longer going to be safe or sustainable for Disney to like operate this with any kind of, it just wasn't going to live up to like the version of the park they had imagined. So I guess
I've never heard of this.
I know
place.
it is a super, you can still find pictures of it, I think, online, but it's a super buried part of Disney's history. So what happened was they took all of the wild animals that they had living on this little island and they relocated them over to what is now known as Animal Kingdom. And if you go to Animal Kingdom today, there is a designated portion of it which is called Discovery Island.
Oh my God.
Yes. And now the actual Discovery Island, it's just this little abandoned, wretched island. It's horrific. Disney still owns it. It's moss-grown. You can see it from the park. It's like a moss-grown relic in the distance in Florida.
That
Ominous.
is so unsettling.
Deeply unsettling. I don't know what I'm smelling in the background right now, but I think it's...
You're having a stroke.
I think it's... It's the smellitizer from Disney. It's like the smell of deeply burning popcorn. I don't know who would be making popcorn right now, but
It's Mickey.
pop, pop.
Mickey's in your house. You better watch out.
Stop. That's deeply unsettling. But that is it, Jack Dillon. Those are all the Disney urban legends and conspiracies I have. Again, purely intended for entertainment purposes, not intended to harm any one person or a company. And they do not
so
necessarily
deeply
reflect our
unsettled.
views. Are you unsettled? I wanted to
very
make you
unsettled.
uncomfortable.
I was actually looking over my shoulder
Jesus Christ.
a lot.
Which
I
one
was
got you
having
the
like
worst?
flash images of all these things. It was
Oh my
like really
God.
scary.
Damn. Am I a decent storyteller? Is
You
that what
are.
is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh.
But also like on a level where I was like having like, as you were telling the history of certain things, I was getting like the thing that happens to me when I'm like, there's something in the room with me,
Jesus Christ, you having visions, presence.
which kind of like scared me because I was like, I haven't had those for a while.
Oh my God.
Specifically, never in my own bedroom. But it started happening a lot when you were talking about Discovery Island and also like mentioning Walt.
Discovery Island, doesn't that inherently just feel like it has bad energy around it? Like, I don't know if it's that era of Disney, like the 80s of Disney, feels like a seedy time.
Yeah, it sounds like a horrible place, and I never ever want to go.
There's that's not the only abandoned portion of Disney that they have. I think they had a water park that never saw its way to fruition because the water had become contaminated. I don't know the full breadth of the story, but like the water became contaminated. I don't know if this is back in the 80s or 90s, and it killed like 3 children. It became contaminated.
I'm sorry, I'm having chills right now. I'm having a reaction, and I think I know what it is.
What is it?
It's the suicide.
That's what did it? Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, Walt freaked you out. I was like, this abandoned.
No.
Like,
It's the suicide because that's what's happening right now.
what?
I'm literally having flash images right now of the suicide, and I haven't seen this picture. But if you send me this picture and it's what I'm visioning right now, I'm gonna freak out.
What do you think? What do you think it looks like? I know what it looks like. You're talking about the Small World one, right?
Yeah, it's like a kind of a blurry picture,
Okay.
and
I don't want to
It's kind
send it
of
to
like
you.
the-
I feel like it's going to be bad for you. I don't want you to see it.
I'm seeing like the red. I'm seeing like the red of the overalls, but it's kind of like at the top of the picture.
So eventually, basically just what I described. So the thing that I told you what the picture looked like. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Hackery 101, taught by Jack Dillon. I'm going to see if I can even find the picture. Yeah, I got it. Oh, it is ominous to look at. I mean, when I first rode that ride, I was having a deeply, deeply disturbing experience solely because I think I told you this. There was a child who was sitting in like the boat in front of us who just like turned around and looked at us with this expressionless face for the entire ride. And we were so unbelievably uncomfortable that we had to avert our eyes from a child. He had no life in his eyes. Don't look up that picture. I hear you typing. Don't do it.
No, I need to look at the picture right now.
Jack, don't do it, baby.
No, I need to.
Is it what you think it was?
I got a new audition. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Ew, I hate that.
You found it?
No, I was just looking at I was viscerally reacting to the audition. I have to. I hate it. Suicide.
Healthy things to be looking up at night. Good things to be looking up
Disney
at night.
Red
Positive things.
Overall. Disney Small World.
I think you could literally type in Small World Suicide and you would get it. Fuck.
Oh my god.
Are you deeply unsettled? Severely unsettled?
Oh my god.
The drama in your voice right now, my God. Also, I should preface, we do not know if this is confirmed as true. This could very well be like some fake conspiracy shit. Like that's why I was prefacing. I'm like, all of these are just urban legends. However, I did get like freaked out about the red overall thing because I was like, well, is that even true? Is the Small World uniform the red overalls? It was. It actually was. And I think timeline-wise, that did line up with when she said the picture was taken, which I think was 1999.
Did you just get the picture I just sent you?
No. Did you text it to me?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. What are you going to send to me? Please don't let it be foul, whatever it is. I don't like what I'm looking at. This is a picture. It looks like a back room at Disney in an attic, some kind of a huge attic. And it looks to be what I can only guess is a Disney employee who is playing basketball, even though there is no basketball hoop, with someone who is in a goofy costume. This is what the Disney prisons look like. Disney jail. This is it.
This is the Disney jail. This is actually behind, I think it's
your apartment. This is behind your apartment. This is, I can't say that. Dang, I have to be on good behavior. This is such a long podcast that I'm most certainly, it's not going to be edited. So it's just going to be an unedited podcast.
It's a full
like the beginning banter,
cut.
That's going to have to go for sure. But the majority of this, I think, will go raw. Oh, I was going to tell you this. I almost forgot. So when I was talking about the other places of Disney that got abandoned, there was that water park that had like brain-eating amoeba because the water wasn't properly chlorinated or something. But the other part that was abandoned was this resort that Disney was building called Mowgli's Palace. Do you know Mowgli?
Mowgli's Palace.
Mowgli, yeah. You know about that?
No.
Mowgli's Palace was obviously from the Jungle Book. Mowgli. That's how you say it, Mowgli?
Yeah, Mowgli.
Disney, I don't know where this was, if this was in Florida. I kind of vaguely remember it being like something Disney wanted to extend to the Bahamas, but that wouldn't really make sense. Basically, they were trying to like clear out a bunch of land where people had homes, and they were going to build this giant resort with that theme. And they tried to sell it like this is going to be so great for the economy and like you can all work here. And it was just this, it was supposed to be this dream thing, but it was met with so much public disdain and outcry from the people of that area that eventually, like, even though Disney started the construction and like had essentially finished the place, they invested $30 million. It never opened. It's an abandoned project.
Oh my God.
And it just sits there to this day as this like weird, haunting, I don't know, ambition that was met with like such public disdain that it just like failed before it even started. I don't know. There's something odd about that, about something that was intended to be like a buzzing, hopping, exciting place where you could go with your family and it was Disney themed, and it just sits empty. It just sits abandoned.
Yeah,
I think that.
Disney's a really fucked up place.
I mean, if there's anything that this podcast episode hopefully has convinced you of, it's that Disney is quite possibly anything other than the happiest place on earth.
And we'll never be working with them anytime soon.
I'm telling you, like, no premieres, no movie deals.
Nothing.
I don't even think they'll sponsor this podcast through programmatic. We'll see. But with that, I'm going to wrap us up. Jack, Dillon, thank you so much for giving me your time. Thank you so much for going down this rabbit hole of Disney conspiracies and urban legends. We should do this again. You're a great co-host on the podcast. You're actually...
Oh, thank you so much. That's for the creepers to decide.
No, I think they've already decided. No, that was great. I think that they would love to have you on again, so we will have you back. Creepers, let us know if you would like to see Jack as a co-host down the line, and we can maybe do a part 2 to even darker Disney conspiracies.
They all say no. They're like, we hate this guy.
I just get private emails. They're like, get that fucking hack off the air. Jesus Christ.
Who's that guy with that voice? I don't want him.
Somebody keeps sending, so like I have like a joint email. I have like a couple of emails, but there's one that I share with my management, so I see everything that comes through that. Somebody keeps emailing that. And they keep like emailing from text, like they're texting an email, and they keep sending a picture of like this random kid, and they're like, can you write a creepypasta about him and call him by this name? And it has to include, like, they're like feeding me all these weird details, and it's clearly like somebody who's either their friend or somebody they hate, and they're like, write a terrible creepypasta about him. He has to die in the end. And then like, we've never responded to them, but they keep incessantly messaging us. And sometimes they'll send like 6 emails in one sitting.
Oh my God, you have to send a cease and desist.
I mean, we just delete them, but like it's their persistence is crazy, because like they actually changed up their strategy where they blocked out the person's face. They like started by just sending the person, and they were like, okay, how about now? Because now you can't see their face. Now will you write a creepypasta?
Disgusting.
It's
Whoever's
horrid.
doing that, you better watch out.
It's you. It's you.
It's me, guys.
And with that, we're going to say goodnight. I hope everybody has a wonderful time. Thank you for listening to CreepTime, the podcast. We will see you on another one. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.